Good afternoon. I'm Pastor Neil Harrison here at First Lutheran Church, and we're so grateful to have each and every one of you here. Welcome to First Lutheran Church. We know there's people from here from different congregations and from the whole community, and we're grateful to have you here today. I noticed that we have even our sheriff, Brent Kilberg, is here, and so is State Representative Steve Bradley. And did I miss any other elected officials? So we're grateful. And why are they here, and why are we here? Because this is an important public issue and an important public awareness event. So we're grateful to host it here at First Lutheran Church. Especially we're grateful to our First Lutheran Women and the First Lutheran Women Board for hosting this event with the other women of the ELCA here in the regional area. As a matter of hospitality, a couple matters of hospitality, you can go out, if you need restrooms, just go to the entrance of the sanctuary to the back here and to the right, and straight down on the right are the restrooms during the event. Also, these are brand new cushions here. You're welcome to bring in go out and get the hospitality, the lemonade and the coffee and the cookies, and bring them in. But if you happen to have a spill, let us know right away, because we just bought these cushions are only 3 weeks old, and they cost a lot of money, so we want to clean that up right away. Otherwise, thanks for being here. We're grateful to host this event, and I'm going to introduce you to our. Well, before I do that, though, I'm going to say this is promising to be an outstanding event. I'm Pastor Neil Harrison, and our guest today is Sergeant Neil, and he even spells it the right way, and it's even spelled the right way. So, but of course, I'll leave it up to our First Lutheran Women President, Kim Snook, to introduce the program and guest.
Thank you, Pastor. Thank you all for coming, and what a monsoon we had right before this, and we were thinking, is anyone going to show up? But we're really glad you did. Yes, this is a really important topic. I worked for the DOT for 38 years, so when I introduced Neil Suko soon, his boss, who was the boss at the time when I was working with him, Chief Lorenzen, found it very important to him to really promote human trafficking in the state, to learn to work with the truck drivers and trafficking against human trafficking, and it was very important. And I had the privilege to work along with him in driver services. In fact, every CDL license that we gave out or tested for actually got cards from us to keep in their truck to be able to report, and I hope they're still doing that. But so we all work together very hard within the state, even within other agencies, which Neil will go over soon. I do want to welcome the Jackson County Sheriff's Office for attending. Macokota PD only has one on staff right now, or they would have probably been here, but we have Melissa Schmidt, Karen Wells, and of course our Sheriff, Brent Kilberg. Thank you for coming. Our guest speaker is Neil Suko. He grew up in a small town of Fredericksburg in northeast Iowa. We know where that is. He graduated from Wartburg College, but I also found out that he went to co-college with my son, which was kind of scary for me that he knew my son, but that's okay. He has a bachelor's degree in business administration. After graduation, Neil worked for Wells Fargo for a short time before starting his career in law enforcement. He was hired by the Iowa Department of Motor Vehicle Enforcement, where he started his career in western Iowa before moving back to Cedar Rapids. He was promoted to a sergeant January of 2017, and he leads a team of 6 officers in east central Iowa. He's very active within the motor vehicle enforcement as a defensive tactics instructor and radar LiDAR, what's that, is that right? Instructor. He also leads the field training program and hiring process for motor vehicle enforcement. And let me tell you, that's a very big job. Neil's been part of the Truckers Against Trafficking team for 8 years now. He's been married to his beautiful wife, and that's wonderful to have you put that in your bio, Jenna, for 8 years, and they have 3 dogs. Neil and his wife has a passion for working out and attending concerts all over the Midwest. So let's give him a big warm welcome for being here on a Sunday afternoon. Thank you, Neil, and I'll turn it over to you.
Everybody hear me all right? Okay, perfect. You know, I put that in there, my beautiful wife, because I don't know if anybody ever records this, and I don't want it to get back to her if I would put something else in there. So, no, my wife, a little bit my backstory, she's actually assistant county attorney for Buchanan County, so she does very well for her. and we actually kind of go well together, I guess, at the end of the day. So thank you, Kim. Thank you, all of you guys, for coming. This is something that I think is very, very important, and I'm really happy to see Sheriff and his staff being here too, because a lot of times it's the big counties out there that kind of have the resources to put in it, and sometimes the rural counties don't. So it's good to see that they're willing to put that effort in to help combat human trafficking around the state of Iowa. So we're going to kind of go through this PowerPoint here. There's a couple videos. I do want people to understand, unfortunately, this is a topic that there are going to be things said that are sometimes uncomfortable to listen to, okay? At the same time, we want to make sure that we put it out there like it is. And please, if at any point in time you feel uncomfortable or you don't like the story that's given potentially about a victim, you won't bother me if you just stand up and want to step out for a little bit. That is perfectly okay. So first and foremost, like Kim said, Director Lorenzen, he was our chief. He has now moved into the director role within the DOT. He started our partnership with an organization called Truckers Against Trafficking back in 2011. So it's been quite some time that we've been working with Truckers Against Trafficking. So you'll see these slides. I understand, I mean, you probably aren't in the trucking industry, but the information realistically is the same, okay? We give a lot of presentations to the trucking industry, so that's why we're kind of set up for the information side of things, okay? So, first three questions I always start out with every time I give this presentation, and you don't have to write it down, but kind of be thinking about these three questions. One, what is human trafficking? How do you define human trafficking, or what do you think human trafficking is? I want you to think about that one as we go through this presentation. Number two, what would you suspect a typical trafficker, okay, the bad guy, what would he look like in your eyes, or she, and say just he or she? And number three, what would a victim look like in your eyes? Okay? Hopefully when you're all done with this, you have kind of an answer, if you don't have one right now. But I do want you to think about that as we go through this, okay? We'll start off here just with a quick little video. It was working. Do I have to hit power on this thing? Maybe if I push power? You can just hit play on it. Yeah, I'm hoping, I think so. Technology is really great when it works, right? It always goes down. I mean, we were here early, we had it all running, we tested the video, everything, and this is normally how it goes. That's okay. And that's kind of why we invited Sheriff Kilberg, because he's going to entertain you for these down times like this. So, yeah. Okay. Well, I'll buy some time because I like interaction from the crowd. So I had those three questions. And normally when we give these presentations, I have people shoot answers out to me. So we will do that while he kind of works on the PowerPoint. Question 1, what is human trafficking to you? Can anybody or would anybody be willing to shout out what they think human trafficking is? Okay, good, good. Anything else? Yeah, no, she just said somebody being forced into doing something, realistically. Anybody else have anything else that they would define? Yeah. Probably because I move around too much. Anybody else have anything? Can, potentially. Yeah, good. What's that? Okay. No, you guys just need to talk a lot louder. Or I'll have you stand up and no, that she said that money would be exchanged for services, whatever the services would be, and for the money for the person. Okay, I'm gonna add in there for the services this person's gonna exchange. Okay, and you will see through this PowerPoint, money is the driver. Okay, money is absolutely what makes this criminal activity go round. Got her? Think so? If you can hit her to play, you can.
My name's Cora.
Perfect.
I'm 11 and a half. My mom bought me a karaoke machine for Christmas because I love to sing and dance. I want to be famous. I want to go on tour and travel the world. But my dreams might be over. Today I went missing. Most people won't take a grieving mother seriously until 2 or 3 days after the child's disappearance. By that time, it's too late. By the time you decide to start looking, I might be halfway across the country, maybe even the world. Next month, I'll be in every magazine, website, and newspaper you read. But in 6 months, I'll just be a fading picture. And in a year, you won't even remember my name. My name's Cor. That's short for Corinne. I'm 11 and a half years old, and I'm a future sex slave.
We like to show that video kind of off. It kind of hits deep down under, doesn't it? Anybody here have kids? Yeah, a lot of you, okay? A lot of times you associate those kind of items. We want to kind of hit home on how important this topic really is. We'll start off, what is human trafficking? Definition, exploitation of human beings through force, we had talked about, fraud or coercion for the purpose of commercial labor, or sex trafficking when a third party is making a profit, okay? So there's big key terms that we want to talk about there. First, force, fraud, or coercion, just got to meet one of those. And the last part of that, a third party has to be making a profit, okay? So whoever is doing the exchange of services, somebody else is making money off of them doing those services, okay? Unfortunately, it is modern day slavery. That's what it's viewed as, and almost identical to it. Sex trafficking is forced prostitution, okay? So many people kind of get prostitution and human trafficking mixed up, okay? Prostitution is an act that's being completed by somebody, but they're receiving the money, they get to keep the money, okay? Whereas human trafficking, whatever services they're doing, they're pretty much keep little to no money. The money is going back to a third party, which we would classify as their trafficker, okay? Any adult who is selling sex under somebody else's control is a victim of sex trafficking, no matter their age, okay? Up on the very top, it says, any minor engaged in commercial sex is a victim of sex trafficking. If you see any young boy or girl under the age of 18 involved in commercial sex, it's automatic a crime. It does not matter if they want to do it or not. They cannot do it. It's part of human trafficking. Okay? So 18 is that age. That's the federal law. Iowa pretty much copies the federal law as far as when it comes to that. Okay? So please, if you see anybody, I will reiterate this, under age of 18 involved in commercial sex, please report that. Nearly every country is involved in the web of human trafficking activities. It is global. It is unfortunate. United States, state of Iowa, is not exempt from that by any means. Internet makes it really easy, unfortunately. Technology helps in this. We talked about 3 key elements of human trafficking: force, fraud, or coercion. Does anybody have any ideas on what kind of force could be involved in human trafficking? Taking somebody against their will. Anybody else? Could be beatings, could be drugging them, forcing them to take drugs of any sort. It could be beating them to get whatever they want out of them. Okay? Anything pretty much that they are forcing them to do something that they don't want to do. It could be considered force. Okay? Fraud. Anybody think of an example where fraud could be the element? Yes. Could be. The one that we kind of always like to use is you'll see where they'll put out like modeling ads. Okay, so you'll see young individuals that will apply thinking that they're going to be a model, and they'll get hooked in with a trafficker with the idea that, hey, I'm hooked up with a good agency down in whatever place it may be. You come, I can take photos of you. I'll send these photos off to this agency. If you're good, I'll get you hooked up with this modeling career, and you'll just make millions. You'll be on the cover of People magazine, whatnot. And then, so they take these photos, send them off, and they hear, yep, you got to come down to where, no matter where it may be. I'll just say, for the sake of saying a place, you got to come down to Georgia. That's where the modeling agency is. They go down. As soon as they're in, okay? They were giving false information reference the modeling career, okay? Then they'll keep them in, probably by force, quite honestly. It's what it tends to be. Coercion, and this is probably the strongest one in the 3 elements. Anybody know how coercion could be used? So it's threats, okay? So when an individual sometimes get hooked into human trafficking where they can't get out, a lot of times the trafficker will give them a lot of freedom. And I listened to a victim talk. One of her issues that she had was her trafficker gave her a phone, let her come and go, whatever wanted, and said, hey, you know what? You leave me this, showed her sister, will be my next victim. So she stayed in so her sister didn't have to get into the human trafficking. That would be coercion. Threats against family, threats against religion. A lot of times when these victims initially are brought into human trafficking, they will be gang raped and it'll be videotaped. And they'll keep that videotape and they'll show the victim and say, yep, you know what? Look at what you did. If you leave, this is going to go on the internet. I'm going to send it to your parents. I'm going to send it to, your church, all that. They're going to disown you, kind of deal. So those are the threats, coercion, and quite honestly, you listen to victims talk, that is the hardest one to overcome, realistically. Smuggling versus trafficking. Smuggling Keep in mind, I believe the next is a crime against the border. Okay, so smuggling realistically is you pay somebody to get you across a border. Okay, that is the act. It's just literally a crime against the border. Whereas trafficking is a crime against a person. Okay, so does smuggling become trafficking sometimes? Yes, very much. A lot of times it will come into like either commercial labor trafficking. A lot of people will use it there, or they may potentially even start as smuggling and it'll turn into sex trafficking. Okay, hey, I paid for you to get across the border. Now you owe me this services, or you need to make me the $50,000 I paid to get you across the border. Okay. There's a couple myths that we want to talk about here. Obviously, human trafficking is 40 million victims of human trafficking globally. So that's worldwide, all right? Now, is it more prevalent in other countries than it is in the United States? Yeah, it can be. Is it very prevalent in the United States? 100%. Is it happening in Iowa? Yes. And as we go here, you will definitely see more and more of how it is happening here. Human trafficking is a $1 billion industry worldwide. Some sources say it's number one. Some say it's number two to drug trafficking. Okay? The criminal enterprise is ultimately what it comes down to. But we talked about money. Money is the driver in human trafficking. It's happening in all 50 states to include District of Columbia, okay? Unfortunately, Iowa is not exempt by any means here, and you'll see in a couple more slides on that. 1 in 6 runaways are at risk of being trafficked, okay? Does anybody have any ideas why runaways would be more at risk of being trafficked? Yeah, they're vulnerable. Yep, they're vulnerable. Whatever it may be, it could be shelter, it could be food, it could be compassion. They're just looking for somebody to love them, okay? They need something. Obviously, they ran away from something, and they're looking for something. Traffickers are very, very good at finding these individuals out and what they're in need of, okay? That's why runaways are very, very high risk to be trafficked. The other thing, and I mean, I will admit this, law enforcement was behind the curve when it comes to runaways, okay? A lot of trafficking happens within the family, okay? Whether it be mom, dad, brother, sister, sibling, stepbrother, sister, somebody could be potentially causing them or having them trafficked within their family, okay? A lot of times, what do they do to get away from that? They run away. Well, you go back 10, 15 years, and I'm sure Sheriff Kilberg will tell you this. What did law enforcement do? If you found that runaway, you threw them in your seat, you yelled at them, you're wasting our time, quit running away, and then we take them right back to whatever potentially they were running away from. And so, as law enforcement, we're starting to get that training out to where, hey, start asking questions. What's causing these runaways to leave home? What's causing them to run away, realistically? So everybody's starting to get on board. Hopefully, we can keep working in the right direction as far as runaways come. A victim may be forced to have sex up to 20 times a day. That realistically probably should be forced to be raped 20 times a day. Nobody wants to do that. I don't care what anybody says. That's how it should read realistically. But yeah. Venues for trafficking. Now, there's 4 photos up there. These they cover a lot of different areas. The top one up there, that's kind of the agricultural, where we see in Iowa a lot of the commercial labor trafficking happening. Okay? There's a case down in Atalissa was labor trafficking here in Iowa. So keep in mind, a lot of people want to immediately think about sex trafficking in human trafficking, but it also includes labor trafficking. Okay, at the end, I'll talk a little bit more about another organization that is doing very well in raising awareness within businesses. But number 2, that second photo as you work your way down, that's supposed to symbolize kind of like the bars, the nightclubs, the strip clubs mentality. A lot of times, these victims, they'll have what they call quotas that they have to meet. Now, that quota is set by their trafficker, whatever number that is, amount of money that they have to make that trafficker. If they can't make that, a lot of times they'll be forced to work in strip clubs, okay? That's their way to make that money. So, bars at night, nightclubs, that's where they'll start looking for victims, okay? Because it's a good time to sit back, see who's maybe been eliminated from a group that they came out with, okay? Who may be that vulnerable individual that they can come in, show them compassion, give them food, shelter, whatever they may be looking for. So the third one down is like state fairs, carnivals, those kind of things. Realistically, that covers any time that you have a big time event where there's going to be a lot of people gathering, where there's going to be a lot of money. Chances are the chance there'd be human trafficking increases, okay? So anytime you have a lot of people, a lot of money, I'm venture to say that internet is going to increase with ads for human trafficking, okay? And the very bottom one, anybody in here never stay in a hotel? Okay, I'm still looking for that one individual that's never stayed in a hotel. But here's why I ask that. Because every single one of you could potentially come across a trafficker and a victim. A lot of these acts now are taking place in hotels, all right? So how do you know? How do you know if somebody is a victim or if they're a trafficker? Is that out of the ordinary? That's the best answer to it. Okay, I can't tell you one super red flag thing that if you see this, it is human trafficking 100% of the time. I cannot tell you that. I don't think you'll find a law enforcement officer out there that will tell you that. Every circumstance is a little bit different, okay? What I can tell you is if it's out of the ordinary, if it doesn't seem normal to you, for instance, in a hotel, you see it's middle of winter, okay? You see a young, we'll say 13-year-old female walking down the hallway with a large overcoat, dressed very risque underneath. Go up, knock on a door, that door open, you walk in. Anybody think twice about that, realistically? You should, okay? Especially if it's wintertime. I mean, wintertime, I'm dressed in pants, probably tights underneath the pants, a winter coat, stocking hat, gloves. If I'm going to be outside, I wouldn't expect an individual to be dressed, yeah, they had a coat on, but if they're dressed really risque, knock on a door, just walk in, that door slams shut, that should maybe raise some red flags to you. Does it mean that it's human trafficking? No, okay? It doesn't mean 100% sure that it's human trafficking, but if you call, report, maybe the local agency will come, knock on doors, talk to people. They can either gather intel or potentially, if it is, they can go down that road or whatever charges it may entail, okay? But if that phone call is never made or that awareness is never made, that's just another act that's being done and that victim's never going to be saved, right? Yes? So here's our best recommendation on that. If the victim is in immediate danger, you need to call 911. That's going to get the local authorities there. That's your first phone call. Yep, 911. 100%, I would say that he or she is in immediate danger. If you're thinking they're going to commit an act, or potentially you see a beating or something like that, which we'll talk about here with Beth. But they're in immediate danger. You need to call 911. It's going to bring the local authorities there immediately. Now, after calling 911 and giving that information to local authorities, we ask that you call, the number will be popped up here, it's 1-888-3737-888, okay? That's the human trafficking hotline. Why is that important? Because that's tracking all the intelligent information that's coming in. It comes in, it's then sent to the local authorities. Here in the state of Iowa, it's sent to the Office Combat Human Trafficking, and it's sent to Director Lorenzen, which he sends out to our local officers. We then check in, along with the DCI, check in to make sure that the local agency did an investigation reference this. But even more important to that is somebody out in California sees the same individual, same intel, make a call 5 days later. What did we just connect if they have charges 10 days down the road? We made it interstate. They crossed state lines. Now, federal law comes into play, mandatory minimums, okay? That's why punishment tends to be a lot harsher when it comes to federal law than it does to state law a lot of times. Now, Iowa has done a very, very good job of replicating what the federal law is when it comes to human trafficking. Moving on. All traffickers look like what we call TV, and this is the only time you're ever going to hear me say the word pimp, okay? Because I don't like that word, and we should realistically be removing it from our everyday terminology. But is this what you guys thought you would see as a trafficker? No. They're not going to be dressed in the top hat with the cane, wearing the big bling. This is actually what they're going to look like. Okay? If you look up in the top left-hand corner, Amber Parker, she was a school teacher, trafficking her own students. Bottom right-hand corner is a firefighter. Top right-hand corner is a diplomat from India. She actually has a really interesting story. She was making her maid work 16-hour days for $3 an hour. She ended up getting charged for labor trafficking. She was actually a diplomat for India in New York, was actually where she was at. So this is an interesting quote, and you can find this quote, you can buy this book, I believe it's up there. Yeah, A Guide on How to Be a Pimp. Okay, you can go on to Amazon and buy this. We'll read it through here. There's no better feeling in the world for me than turning a girl into a prostitute. The special feeling that very few ever get to experience. The satisfaction comes from you knowing that if you walked up to her the first time you met her, told her what your plan was, she'd run the other way. But through some sweet talking and careful planning and execution, this girl is about to go sleep with dudes for money and bring it to you. It's a great feeling. What do you guys think about that? Yeah, it's sad. Sad that we even allow that stuff to be published, right? But, freedom of speech, we have to do it. But what's this doing? And as long as we recognize this, normalizing it, right? They specifically talk in there through some sweet talking. That's what we call the grooming process, where they go in, they groom the victim. Before they ever have them do anything, they groom them so that the victim trusts them then. Okay? Buys them things, all kinds of things that they can do to groom them, give them love and compassion. So this is Annika. Annika kind of has a very unique story as far as human trafficking. She was out Vegas. She was on the Vegas Strip waiting at a bus stop when she had a car of a male and a female come up to her. Very nice dressed male and female, rolled down their window, says, hey, you're a pretty nice young lady. Do you want to come to a party with us? Whether you think it's right or wrong, Annika's like, yeah. She said, they look normal. They were very, very nice. I was looking for some friends. Yeah, I'll go to a party with you. At that party is where she actually met her trafficker. Okay? Trafficker met her, groomed her for several months until Annika actually wisened up. She's like, this does not seem right. She actually got out before she ever had to commit any acts. Okay? She did a lot of counseling. She went back to that same bus stop 2 years later, watching the same act go on. Crazy. 2 years later, people were still trying to find victims at the same bus stop that she was at, and she was able to pick them out. Now, obviously through her experience. Beth, on the other hand, she did not have as good of an experience. Beth actually came and talked to our department a couple years back. She's now in a wheelchair because of what she's gone through, being human trafficked. When she was 16 years old, she moved out to Minneapolis, Minnesota with her dad, with the understanding that she had to go out, get a job, make money herself. Again, she was waiting for a bus at a bus stop. There was a local bar there where the owner said, hey, I see you waiting here all the time. Why don't you come on in? I'll let you play pool and have a beer. How old is Beth? 16. Okay, so probably not the best thing, but when I was 16, if somebody said that growing up, yeah, probably, a teenager would think, yeah, I want to be all grown up. I'll go in there. Beth did. In that bar, she did this multiple times through her job search. Always the same bus stop. When she'd go early, she'd go in, met people in the bar, guys. Played pool, actually went to barbecues with some of the guys that she met in the bar. Till one day, she missed her bus. She goes into the bar. She asks this one guy named Mo that she knew very well, what she thought she knew very well. Said, hey, Mo, can you give me a ride home? I missed my bus. Mo said, you bet. Let me finish this pool game, drink my beer, and I'll take you home. Gets in. Beth specifically remembers him handing her a McDonald's cup and said, hey, here's a drink, have it. Next thing she remembers, she woke up at a truck stop. At that point in time, Mo tells her, I'm a pimp trafficker, and you're going to go sleep with this truck driver. You're going to give me all the money. Beth tried to escape. Mo beat her right there in the truck parking lot. Truck driver and Mo carry Beth to the truck driver's semi where he rapes her. Truck driver comes back to the trafficker and says, hey, she cried the entire time. I want my money back. So Beth gets beat in the parking lot out in public's eye. And she'll tell you, she can still watch, still see people looking at her as she was getting beat by this guy. Obviously, nobody called, or if they did, they didn't come. She was then taken to Chicago where she was gang raped, stripped of all of her possessions, clothes, food, IDs, all that passport, all that was taken from her, and then she was trafficked for multiple years. She was arrested over 100 times by law enforcement. You think law enforcement screwed up there? Yeah. And this is the most unfortunate part. She'll tell you that she was used by some of the Minneapolis police department. That makes me super sick. Guessing that makes Sheriff Kilberg and his staff super sick. But she'll tell you, you know what Beth does now? Goes out and trains law enforcement. She goes, none of them ever even asked me. She's like, they'd just arrest me, stupid prostitute, get in the jail, and then I'd be let out. My trafficker would bail me out, no big deal. Get arrested 2 days later. So, Beth eventually did get out. She does work for Truckers Against Trafficking. Like I said, she trains law enforcement. She's a great, great woman. Went through a lot of things. If you ever get a chance to see her, she does do a lot of speaking events. You get that chance to see her. She's amazing at that. That video gonna play, you think? There we go.
Inherently, as human beings, we want to be loved. We want to be loved by somebody. And if we don't feel that love in our homes, we're going to be looking for that.
All kids are vulnerable to trafficking.
People always ask me, where's human trafficking occurring? And it's occurring everywhere.
I'll be honest with you, it wasn't on our radar, and I've been in law enforcement 38 years, and I'm kind of ashamed to say it wasn't on my radar.
So many people don't see victims as victims because of how they perceive a prostitute.
We have kids who come from two-parent families, not divorced, no criminal history, and they too have found themselves victims of trafficking.
He said, "Baby, do you know what I am?" And I said, "No." And he said, "I'm a pimp. You're mine now. You belong to me. You're going to get in this truck and sleep with this guy, and I'm going to get the money." And, that's how I got in.
It's a crime that's often described as occurring in secret, but really it occurs in the open.
We need to step away from just thinking, oh, they look like this, and really look at how we look at anything else with crime.
The tactics of a trafficker are going to evolve to match their prey. These individuals are smart, they are savvy, they're typically excellent communicators.
Young girl, she's 17 years old, gonna graduate early from high school, and she's on a dating website, and somebody says, "Hey, you're really pretty, I would like to hang out." Goes and meets this guy at a motel, and the next thing you know, she's being trafficked.
They act like they really care about them. They'll act like they're their boyfriend or girlfriend, and they understand them.
They want that victim to be more afraid of the system than they are of the trafficker.
Our job is to make sure that the victim is okay from the get-go.
I have to protect that person, and I have to attempt to get them help.
Are we doing everything we can do in law enforcement to rescue some of these people who are so young, who've been forced into this, to do this? It's a horrible crime. It's modern day slavery.
We're all there is to go and bring down the bad guy.
So you heard Beth talk a little bit in there. She spoke majority of that. The other one was the director of Truckers Against Trafficking that spoke quite a bit in there too. But so the perfect storm. Why is human trafficking so prevalent, in the United States? You look up there, you'll see why we don't, when we give these presentations, why we don't use the word pimp. Okay. Why do you guys think that is? It's normalized pimp. We actually, in our society and culture, have made cool shows, Pimpin' My Ride, that people think pimping is cool, okay? Schools were holding Pimp Your Pack competitions or days, okay? In colleges, you go to almost every college campus anymore. A lot of them will have theme parties. Some of those will be up there in the second from the right. You guys can read that one. I'm not going to say it. But here's the one that I really want to bring to your attention is that bottom right-hand corner, okay? Grand Theft Auto. Has anybody played this game or know anything about this game? The video game. So what in this video game, and there's other things to this video game, and I'll be honest with you, I've never played it personally. This is just information I've been picking up from people that have played it. But in this video game, as part of it, you can be driving a vehicle, pull up, there's a lady walking along the street. You can pay this lady, it shows the lady get in your car, go in an alley, the car rocks back and forth, your health goes up. If the lady gets out and you then kill her, your wealth goes up. So what are we telling kids by that? It's acceptable. It's cool. It's a good thing. You make money and your health gets better, right? If you do these kind of acts. So, now, is this video game rated 18 or whatever, over age of 18? Yes. But what I do ask people is, we're not going to change the world of video games, but I do ask, if you are a parent, make sure you know what you're buying your kids. Okay? Now, is this game other parts to it? Yes, there is. But what I recommend is play it with your kids. Make sure that they understand what they did is not right. Yes, it's in a video game, but that's make-believe. Okay? I'm not going to sit here and say that that entire game is bad, but that part is bad. And it's normalizing it in our culture, and that's what we need to get away from. Okay? Myth number 3, it doesn't happen in my hometown. So these are headlines that have happened across the nation on arrests here within probably 8 years. These are individuals. These are buyers. These are all photos of buyers. Okay? A lot of times we hear, well, we got to get rid of the buyers. Okay? And I'll be honest with you, there's a lot of sting operations go out there, and there's a lot of buyers that are arrested. Guess what happens? There either ends up working back out of the system, or there's just new buyers that come in. Okay? Can we take down all the buyers? I don't know. They're part of the crime. Either way, whether they're the trafficker or the buyer, they're bad people. Okay? Will law enforcement still go after the buyers? Yep. Are we still going to go after the traffickers? You betcha. Okay? But just understand that sometimes you may see, a buyer that has little to no consequence for what he did. Just know, on the other end, he may be helping out to go after that trafficker. Okay? There's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes that aren't put out in out into the media, public knowledge. But I can tell you that law enforcement, and especially the state of Iowa has made it very clear we will not take human trafficking lightly. Okay? So just be aware of that. This photo is very interesting. So there were 6 individuals, 5 of them are pictured here, that were arrested. 1:40 in the afternoon. Ages ranged from 55 to 88. They were buyers on a sting operation out in West Virginia, Clarksburg, West Virginia. Okay? What I love about this photo, what are 4 of the 5 doing? Hiding their faces. Okay? What does that tell you? They're ashamed because they knew what they did was wrong. And now that they're somebody's grandma or somebody's grandpa, dad, brother, husband, and now they made the newspaper. Even though deep down under they knew what they were doing was wrong. Okay? Just this one guy, he might not have known that it was wrong. He's just not knowing that his photo's being taken there. But that's why I like that photo. Majority of these people that are involved in this know it's wrong. We just got to stop it. Doesn't happen in my hometown. I'm going to read this. This is February of 2022. Dubuque County SO, Sheriff's Office, Dubuque Police Department, and Iowa State Patrol arrest 11 men. Top middle, Dubuque County Treasurer, as a buyer. It does happen here. And I apologize if any of you know that individual, but at the same time, He made a mistake, whether it was his first time or his 100th time. I don't care. But all right in Dubuque, Iowa. I don't know what his sentence is. I don't know if it's gone through the court, to be honest with you, system just yet. So yep. Do I know what that percentage is? Yeah, I don't know if the prison system keeps that percentage. I'm sure they could probably find that information, but I don't know that off the top of my head. I've never been trained, never seen the statistics. Sheriff, do you know anything on that? Yeah, you bet.
Oh, okay. Right. So I followed this van. I thought in my mind, if any one of my young deputies didn't think that was suspicious, I followed it for a while to see what it was doing. Mexico plated van. New Mexico is a high drug trafficking or human trafficking. I used to work for Sergeant Suko, guy, very knowledgeable. Guys do a good job out there. Everything we will see in law enforcement, these guys will see as well. A lot of times they will be the first ones to come across it because trucking, everything moves by the commercial trucking industry. So anyway, that caught my eye. I followed it, committed several traffic violations, but it didn't stop it for those right away because I wanted to see what the bigger picture was and see what was going on with it. So I followed out of town. It dives down a dead-end gravel road. Okay, well, maybe the person's lost, and I'll let it come out or see what it's doing. You know, maybe it sat outside on the edge of the highway waiting for it to come out the dead-end gravel road, and it never did. So I'm like, okay, well, now what's going on? And it's not outside the realm of possibility that a New Mexico plated van, somebody from there could have been visiting here, didn't make a mistake and go down the wrong dead-end road. Anyway, in testifying in court about this during the suppression hearing, I tried to bring up human trafficking element because my training and what I've experienced in law enforcement 30 years, run into some cases like this about the human trafficking element of that. As just one aspect I was considering other than the other crime. I guess where I'm going with this, the reason I'm telling you this is because won't say a name, but there's a well-known defense attorney in our community that poo-pooed that really right away, was like, oh, human trafficking, that doesn't exist. And it kind of floored me and kind of upset me a little bit. And not that it turned out it was not human trafficking, but it's all the things you got to think of. But the fact that somebody who's a prominent defense attorney just poo-poos that, that doesn't exist. That's just, people just talk about that, and it's not in our community. There's the Dubuque County Treasurer. So, I guess it does exist in our communities, and that's why you got to watch for it. You can't just turn a blind eye to it. It doesn't exist. Happen. I ran into it in the Quad City area when I was law enforcement down there. So I'm very glad to see that John Keys is here. Shows he's taking it serious, and that a lot of other people, Steve Bradley's here and stuff like that. It's good that people are taking it serious, guys in the community. So it's just disheartening when you hear somebody say that. Like, well, whether you believe in it or not, it does exist, it does happen. Anyway, I thought on that note lost the case. I lost the suppression hearing because that's where I'll talk about the court system a little bit. It's so frustrating. The judge determined that I didn't have probable cause to stop that van or investigate it because I didn't have any traffic violations. Like it's described, 5 to 6 traffic violations, that I was following this van and observing it. Because as a young rookie cop, you stop everything. No turn signal. But as you get older and wiser in your career, you start to realize, you can screw a case up. Don't let it develop and watch it enough sometimes. You go to the next level. So that's what I was doing. I was kind of hanging back and what's on here. What is the real story? Why this New Mexico plated van is driving around? Anyway, so for whatever reason, the judge was like, well, you didn't have any traffic violations. I described 5 or 6 of them in my testimony in the suppression hearing. So we in law enforcement get frustrated. Prosecuting attorneys can get frustrated because sometimes the courts and the judges just aren't supporting us. So I guess I'll put a pitch in there. Just pay attention to, judges get voted in and out too. Pay attention to what your judges are doing for you or not doing for you. Protecting our that enough.
No, you're okay. Yeah. Realistically, it's kind of all over the board. There's some, the 6 in like West Virginia that I showed you up there, those older gentlemen that were arrested down there, they actually had a $1,000 bond, and then they had to go to counseling sessions. That was their bond if they bonded out in their deal. So it's kind of all over the board. That's not really realistically up to the law enforcement to decide what their penalties are. And that's going to be county attorneys, judges that make those determinations ultimately. So this gentleman, believe it or not, he lived in Manchester, Iowa. He trafficked women in Cedar Rapids, Iowa City, and Waterloo, and Clive. So he was charged 45 years. He was all charged under state, I believe. Let me grab this. Is September of 21. Sentence, nope, it was in federal. Sentence September 2021, 45 years in federal prison in April 22. Sex trafficking, multiple victims. He had boasted about this, so he wasn't even trying to cover it up. He actually told people what he was doing and pretty much bragged about it, how much money he was making, which ultimately probably hurt him in the end. Yeah, he had women engaged in sex acts, and he used blackmail, lied to the women about his intentions, and told women that they owed him or others money, how he got them involved. So, Manchester, I'm sure you guys all know where that's at. You all know where Iowa City, Cedar Rapids, Waterloo, Clive, if you don't know, is in the Des Moines area. Right here, September 2021. It's happening. So these are some of the top headlines in Iowa that have hit for human trafficking. One of the big ones, and a lot of people talk about, is the Des Moines identified as top 100 human trafficking site. Why do you guys think that is? Interstates, yep. You got two main interstates, Interstate 80 that runs from coast to coast, and I-35 that runs from border to border, okay? So those tend to be how they are transported. Victims, traffickers, they run right on the roadway. We're starting to see more and more actually flying, but the good thing is what happens when you fly? Yeah, you got to show IDs. So traffickers have to have very high trust and have groomed their victims if they're going to allow them to fly. Busing is a huge one that they're starting to bus victims across instead of taking them themselves. So this is just a heat map, and this map is actually, I believe, about 8 years old. So I wouldn't be surprised now if that entire United States is filled. It's becoming so prevalent, unfortunately. Myself, our TAT team leader, and a couple of the other members went to a human trafficking summit here in Des Moines a couple months ago. And we had the privilege to listen to a male speak about being trafficked. And a lot of times, and I was guilty of this, everybody immediately thinks of females when it comes to sex trafficking, which they do cover majority of it. But if you look there, 1,200 males, and this victim that spoke, he was one of them. And he flat out told us, males are at a higher climb now than females. So where he got that information, whatnot, I don't know that, but I found that very interesting. So just so that you know, it's not just females out there. Males are being trafficked too, young and older males. That's national. So ways males are trafficked, get into human trafficking are very similar to females. There's no difference. They use force, fraud, or coercion. They prey on the homeless, drug addicted. That's actually what happened with this victim. And then they come from broken homes. Traffickers also use apps. Has anybody heard of this app? This Grindr? I've never heard of it. This is the first time at the human trafficking that I had ever heard of it. So I guess that's an app that they'd use to find male victims. Has anybody been to it's a Freedom Drivers Project. It's a human trafficking trailer that drives all around the nation. It's been down at Walcott Jamboree the last couple years. It's been at the State Fair here the last couple years. Normally at the State Fair, we only get it for about 3 days. Has anybody ever been through that trailer? If you get a chance, I would recommend, if you're in the area, to go through it. inside of that trailer, there's victim stories, victim artifacts, I would say, broken mirrors, lipstick. They have a story that goes with them all. It's an eye-opener. It's ran by the Truckers Against Trafficking. There's companies that haul it around the nation for free for Truckers Against Trafficking. It's been out. Congress out in D.C. have gone through it multiple times out there. So it travels all over. It's really cool. Like I said, if you have the opportunity, I would definitely recommend it. Hold on one second. Leading into this one, I'll give you a little backstory real quick. So the reason I left this one in here, this actually talks about a truck driver that made a call. Understand this guy rescued a young girl that was being trafficked from down by the Warren County, Iowa. Okay? So he makes a call. It's out in Virginia, I believe. So that's who you're going to hear talk through this, I believe. I'm on the right video.
I finished up night deliveries early in the morning. Ended up finding a truck stop about 40 miles outside of Richmond, Virginia to take my 10-hour break. So I was filling out my paperwork, and 2 slots over there was an RV. This one was back in the truck lot, and it didn't look typical. It was kind of beat up, had black curtains. I saw a middle-aged man walk out and knock on the door. Well, the door opens, he goes in, and I'm still filling my paperwork out. And I looked over, and I saw what looked to me to be a young girl look out. And then she vanished, like she was pulled away from the window and the curtain was pushed back over. And I thought, this is a bad situation here. Nothing was reminding me of what a family situation would be. And I thought about it another couple minutes, and I said, this could be something pretty ominous. And so I just got the smartphone out, gave him a call and told him where I was and what I thought might be going on. And not 5 minutes later, 2 sheriff vehicles and 2 state troopers pulled in. And from there, kind of unwound. I feel real good about being able to put 2 people in prison that don't need to be out floating around.
Traffickers have done an amazing job convincing us she's just a prostitute and that we should just turn and look the other way. And this is a really highly effective business model for them, isn't it? Because we're all looking away, and they and the buyers are effectively raping America's women and children and making a ton of money while doing it. And they've also convinced us that this problem is too big, too dark, and too heavy for us to do anything about it. But they are wrong. If traffickers count on our ignorance and our apathy, that nobody knows and nobody cares enough to do anything about this, then we must know and we must care. And time again, history has borne this out. History has shown that when good men and good women do care and do know and get involved, they can actually change a person's life.
Truckers Against Trafficking is like the glue that's going to bond the industry. You guys are the ones that are putting out the materials, you're putting out all the information. Everybody's got smartphones now, everybody's on Facebook. I mean, just the sheer barrage of the information has done nothing but good. When they go through the orientation, they see the video, they get the decals, they also get the wallet cards. And the wallet cards is just a simple way to refresh your memory about what it is that's going on out there. If you see certain traits, this is the number to call. At the end of the day, you get your load there, you get it there safe, you get it delivered on time, and maybe you save somebody's life. What I've learned is human trafficking is a huge problem. And now I have an understanding there's an oppressor, there's the oppressed, and they're not doing this to make money for college or whatever your thought might be. They're doing this to stay alive because there's somebody on the other end of it forcing it.
That's the power of the trucking industry. That's the power of someone who has the courage to take a second look. And that's what trucking is able to do. That's what taxi drivers or bus drivers or law enforcement personnel or hotel workers, whoever you may be, wherever you are, if you take that second look, then what you're able to do by getting involved is you are effectively helping to change a life. And that's what we're asking for. You know, Kevin Kimmel had the courage to look again. Kevin Kimmel recognized, you know what, there's something not right. And he had the courage to make a call and get involved. And now he's helped unlock her pathway back to freedom. No matter what it may look like on the outside, no matter what it may seem like that moment in that parking lot or wherever you may be, that person is a human being. She's so much more. She is not just a victim in that moment, but she is a survivor. She is an overcomer. She is somebody that has a future. And we need the courage to look again. We need the courage to see that our actions in this moment will unlock the path to her freedom.
Well, I got a call from the state police. They wanted to know if I could release my phone number to her, and I said, yeah, that'd be fine. And I think she was still in the hospital. And she told me how much she appreciated it. And she said something to the regards of a guardian angel, and it's like, no, that's not the case, you know. I just made a phone call, and I'm glad I could help you, and I hope you go on and have a healthy and happy life. Try to put this thing behind you. We need to get back to a place where if somebody is in need, that we step up to it. There's a lot of things in life that aren't so obvious. This isn't one of them. My name's Kevin Kimmel, and I'm a trucker against trafficking.
So I left that video in there because I think he makes a really good point in what he talked about. He didn't know anything about human trafficking. He just knew something ain't right. That doesn't seem like a family situation. I'm going to call somebody. Believe it or not, the female trooper, one of the two troopers that showed up, female trooper, they were getting nowhere interviewing these people. The female trooper finally pulled the young girl out, sat her in the car, got her some food. Young girl spilled everything to her. Thank God for that female trooper. Otherwise, it probably would have been nothing there. They would have potentially just kicked them down the road. But believe it or not, Eldar Hoza is the male in there. What they were doing to her, they were taking like nails, paper clips, heating them up on ovens, putting them into her feet, hands. She thought she had made 7 days with no food when she told the female trooper. So they weren't feeding her. They said that she looked very malnourished through there, but so they don't know if she actually made 7 days or not. But yeah, it's a great story. You don't need to know everything about human trafficking to be a hero. I know he doesn't call himself a hero, but he is a hero. He saved a young girl's life. And we all can do that. A couple more slides here, guys, and then we'll kind of open up for questions here. But red flags, what are some of the red flags? And are these going to be the only ones up there? No, but here are some of them that potentially should stand out to you, okay? Lack of knowledge of where they are going. Not in control of their own ID or passport. Does not know who purchased airline tickets, bus tickets, any of that. Restricted or controlled communication. A lot of times you won't even be able to communicate with these victims, okay? And it's not because of the trafficker. It'll be because of the victim. Because the victim knows what happens if she does communicate and she isn't saved, okay? It may be beating, it may be food withheld, it may be death, unfortunately. So understand where they're coming from too on that end of it. Inability to use restroom facility. okay? If you see them with soiled pants, what do most people with soiled pants do? Change them, right? If they don't have any belongings, they can't change them, right? So if you see that, what seems like a family situation and they've got soiled pants, that ain't right, right? Should be sending that stuff law enforcement's way. They're claimed to be held against their will. You'll see these messages a lot in rest areas, restrooms law enforcement will take those messages very, very serious. Disheveled appearance, agitated, scared, crying, showing signs of physical abuse such as a bruising. Guys, if it's a young kid and they're showing bruising, I don't care if it's dealt with human trafficking or what, you need to report that information, okay? Let law enforcement determine what it needs to go down, but no young kid should have any bruising upon them at the end of the day. Signs of branding, tattoos, trafficker, name on the neck. Just because they have somebody's name on the neck doesn't mean they're necessarily involved in human trafficking. I probably wouldn't get my wife's name tattooed on my neck, but she may want me to, but no. At the end of the day, if you take the culmination of all the things into the picture and it doesn't seem right, make the phone call. Let law enforcement deal with it. That's their job. Inappropriate clothing for the location, which we kind of hit on before. And then conversation traveling obtained with no specifics. That's kind of dealing with law enforcement. When they talk with law enforcement, they'll kind of talk in a very broad way, and you start asking specific questions, they won't be able to answer them most of the time. Understand that they not self-identify as a victim. They will not do it. Stockholm Syndrome, part of that. Behavioral dependent on trafficker. If you have that trafficker near them, they are not going to talk with you, pretty much is what it's going to come down to. Chances are they're not going to talk to you anyways, to be real honest with you. They'll lie, usually rehearse stories. Understand they fear law enforcement, okay? So you're going to have to kind of feel them out if you do have a way to communicate with these individuals. But I would not tell them that you're going to call law enforcement. You're going to probably scare them away. Still call law enforcement, but I would keep that separate until law enforcement gets there, okay? Because, like I said, they fear law enforcement because they know what's going to happen from their trafficker if nothing comes of it. Yes? So most of the time they use a coercion for the victim, where they say, well, yeah, you do this, I'll potentially kill. Or like that one victim told her story, she said that he had a photo of her younger sister and said, that's fine, you can leave whenever you want, but she's going to be my next victim. So she stayed in there. So they'll use that against them for coercion, to stay loyal to them at the end of the day. Questions, again, if you have the ability to get with these individuals and communicate to them, hey, does anybody have control over you or tell you what to do? What is your relationship to this person? Are your calls, texts, emails, or other conversations ever restricted or monitored? Do you have access to your ID or other personal documents? Do you keep the money you earn, or does someone else take a part of it? If you're seeing money being exchanged for any kind of an act, I would just call law enforcement, period. Let law enforcement determine what it's all for. You guys don't necessarily need to do that. Do you have access to money? Has your experience met your expectations or what you were promised? I would not ask that question personally. Okay? That is a very drawn out question. Has your experience met your expectations of what you were promised? Yeah, they're not going to answer that one. Would you agree? That's too much for a victim to answer. So that's about the only one that I probably wouldn't. I'd advise you. I would ask some other questions before that one. What would happen if you didn't do what this person said? What would happen if you left the situation or person? Easiest question. Do you want out? Quick. They can answer that question quick. And you can ask that question from stall to stall in a restroom and nobody even really know that a question was asked. Okay? Yes?
Sergeant, could you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, so what he is asking is if he sees something realistically, whatever it may be, how does he know if it's domestic abuse or if it's human trafficking? Okay, and at the end of the day, don't worry about it. Call law enforcement. Let law enforcement deal with it, guys. We're not asking you to know the rule book. That's our job, county attorneys, judges, to know that. Call, let law enforcement come interview people, let them do the hard stuff. Because once you start worrying about it, there may be something there, a crime committed that you're like, well, it doesn't really meet domestic assault or human trafficking. Okay, so it's no big deal. Well, there could be something else there. If it seems abnormal or out of place, I recommend calling law enforcement. I thought somebody else had their hand up. Yes.
Okay. So, that's right. So the truck drivers have really been our friend in this. And as you travel, you stop at a lot of rest areas, a lot of truck stops usually. And when I go into the restrooms there, it's really interesting. After seeing a lot of these trainings, go in and you're looking to see if there's a child in there that's by themselves and maybe somebody waiting outside the door. And you'll see the numbers, the 800 numbers of somebody needs help, but they're not going to communicate with that. That's what you watch for when you the rest areas, and anywhere there's a truck stop. We have a truck. That's where they seem to tend to go. But the truck drivers have been awesome at helping law enforcement, getting them called. I was so happy when he had that card that we handed out.
Yeah. And that's why we, believe it or not, Truckers Against Trafficking, that's why they partnered with the trucking industry, okay? And that's why, obviously, the trucking industry is our core mission as the Iowa DOT Motor Vehicle Enforcement. So that's kind of how we got all into this, and I'm right on board with Kim. The trucking industry has been amazing. And if you ever get a chance to go through that trailer, on the outside they have all the sponsors because it's nonprofit. Truckers Against Trafficking is a nonprofit organization, so they have all their sponsors on it. Guess what they all are? People in the trucking industry. It's amazing.
Let me bring the mic to you, please.
Oh, well, thank you.
Do you have any programs that you high schools have $5,000?
Oh, and I'm sorry I'm scaring you on that end of it. So, yeah, I don't want to scare. It's more, I just want to educate, and that's what we want to do is just educate people, just to keep that eyes open. Do you have to change your everyday living? No, you don't. But just keep your eyes open. As far as the schools, believe it or not, all the school bus drivers have been trained on it. There's a couple different organizations that kind of do schools, ultimately. I would refer you to the Office of Combat Human Trafficking, which is done by the DCI. They're going to be the ones that ultimately either do that training for the schools or they're going to be the ones to set it up. Because, like Chains Interrupted, does anybody know what Chains Interrupted is? They're a victim advocate group in the Cedar Rapids area. Teresa Davidson is the one that started it. She's actually started majority of the trainings within the hospitals on human trafficking to recognize victims in the hospital area. But she has done a ton of school presentations, and I did one with her. But yeah, schools are tough, I'll be honest with you, because when you start talking about this topic, some parents get upset about it.
Have the parents, because we have a lot of kids in this area go to the state track meet, go to the state fair, and they go into the restrooms by themselves. So they need to be aware. I mean, I tell my granddaughters that, like, no, you have to be aware of this. And I wanted to ask you something else. About a month ago, I was in Madison, and this has bothered me. I saw this lady sitting there at the makeup counter. She had her head down, and there was this man there with her, a little older than her, telling the person behind the makeup counter, I want a little more makeup here, and I want this there. Typically never see. I should have called the, because she just blank look on. And he was in control.
And you know what? There are going to be, I'm sure you all are kind of thinking back through your heads of, oh man, did I miss it? As law enforcement, every time I give presentations, there's one specific incident that I'm pretty sure I missed it. And, you know, don't beat yourself up over it. You know, that's why you're here. You're trying to get educated on it. You're trying to learn information on it. But yes, I would agree. I could not tell my wife how to put makeup on. I don't know about the other males in this room, but that would be the last thing if I'm going to ever give my wife advice, would be how to put makeup on. But yes, I would agree. And you pointed out, it just didn't seem normal. And that's a prime example. Did she do anything wrong? No, she didn't. She knows now if it happened again, she's going to make that phone call. And that's what it takes, guys. It's just the education and the awareness behind it. The more eyes we open, the more eyes we have out there, the more victims we'll potentially save at the end of the day. Uh-oh. I think I might have froze it. I don't have the... So this is the Iowa DOT's website here now. To recognize and report, you'll see 5 billboards throughout the state that'll look like this. The DOT has purchased and advertising just to kind of try and raise that awareness out there. This is the last slide up there. This is contact information for Truckers Against Trafficking. I'm going to give you 2 more places to go for resources, okay? Because the state of Iowa has done a very, very good job when it comes to human trafficking. That's going to be the Iowa DCI. So Governor Reynolds has created it's an office to combat human trafficking. It's in the DCI, okay? Their website is stop HTIowa spelled out.org. Okay, really great website. That's who I would probably go to as far as schools. We've talked with Chris Calloway. He's the agent in charge of that office. Ray, I believe it's Fiedler. He's the coordinator within that office. They have kind of set up a lot of trainings. I can tell you, they really like to get into schools, but schools are hard. They really are. But that's probably who I would go to for the schools there. But great resources on that website. The second one is the Secretary of State, Paul Pate, has started a campaign, and it's Iowa Businesses Against Trafficking. So they're having businesses jump on board to help combat human trafficking and labor trafficking out there. Their website, I'll give you their website. That's going to be ibat.iowa, spelled out, .gov. So our agency, we don't care how you get the information. We don't care. We want to give all the information we can out there. We've worked with both of these agencies, both Secretary Paul Pate and Chris Calloway and Ray. both of them. They're awesome programs. You guys can get just as good information from them as you can, like you got today. So please don't feel like you always have to come and get Truckers Against Trafficking stuff. But again, they have some really good videos. If maybe you want kids, they do have videos on this website. You want your kids to watch some things on human trafficking, they do a good job of kind of getting information out to young individuals too on their website. So thank you guys. That's all I have. We'll definitely open up the questions here. Thank you. And I mean, we've got Sheriff Kilberg here, so feel free if you have anything local-wise for questions and stuff. Feel free to shout them out to us. We'll do our best to answer. Yes, ma'am. But you got to wait for the mic, and you got to stand up and talk to everybody.
Okay, so my question is, we have some kind of number, like how many of these people end up getting out of the situation and trafficked?
I don't have a number. No, I'm not gonna spew a number because there's just so many factors that play into it. Depending on what their sentencing is, to whatever their probation. Oh, victims? I don't have that number off the top of my head. I could probably research it. If I got your information, I could probably get it to you. I don't have a number. Are you looking Iowa, or are you looking federal or national?
I don't care. Any level would be nice to know if we have a good percentage of them that get out and are able to do like the examples you had in your presentation.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah. And I agree 100% with Sheriff there. There's people that get out that never even go get help. One of the victims at that human trafficking summit talk, sometimes you just age out too, where your trafficker just lets you go because he knows you're not going to turn him in because they know what's going to come. But you know what? You're not making me any more money. You're out, kind of deal. And they end up homeless majority of the time, because they don't know where to go. And that's where a lot of, believe it or not, religious groups and advocate groups have been amazing because they've started homes for these kind of individuals. It's just the hard part is getting information to them to know what's out there and available. Other questions? Yes, sir.
Wait 1 second, please.
But then you said that schools are hard.
What
is the, what do you think the schools?
Yeah, you're 100%. I agree with you that schools would be where you definitely want to educate these kids, considering majority of the traffickers will find their victims through social media. It's just hard. It's hard just because there's parents out there that have a loud voice that make it, that they're upset that this kind of stuff is being talked about. Yeah, and I wouldn't say it's administration because we were able to, the Office of Combat Human Trafficking, they actually trained all bus drivers. So if you're a school bus driver, you should have been trained on human trafficking. So I don't believe it's one bit on the administration. I think it's just, you got to understand they're working with parents, and that's a hard thing to juggle with. And it seems really dumb. I understand where you're coming from. I totally agree with you, but it's a hard place to go. Yeah. Yep.
I know the Makogata High School has had a couple of presenters there.
Have they?
Because when
Good.
our kids were in high school,
Good.
they've had another
Very
one
good.
since then.
Very good. And I mean, hats off to them for getting it in there. And realistically, it comes down to education also. 5 years ago, I'd say 5 to 10 years ago, you would never have been able to get into school. And I think people are starting to become aware. And realistically, to be honest with you, and that comes from the very top. Governor Reynolds has done a very good job to make sure that human trafficking is a priority in the state of Iowa. So it's just getting everybody educated to where, hey, this is a good thing. I know this is a hard topic to talk about with kids sometimes, but it needs to be talked about.
Trying to convey there is all people are different, right? And everybody's got a difference of opinion on, what's good to educate people about and what maybe is bad. So like recently we've been putting on some active attacker tools, the run, hide, fight concept. And it's always, this would be an even more sensitive topic for parents than that even, because some people would be like, well, why are you going in and talking stuff and even talking to kids and stuff? Because within that community, that school community, the attacker is somewhere within that student body. Basically, you're telling them what law enforcement response is or how they should respond prior to law enforcement arriving, kind of giving them the playbook for when this happens. And it's like, yeah, that's true, but so maybe 1 out of 1,000 in the body. And it's really, it's concepts. It's not kind of like what Neil's talking about. There's no one thing, like if you see this, that's definitely human trafficking. Just what doesn't look right, what seems odd, what seems normal. For example, if him or I walked up to a semi-driver and at their door are talking to him and we notice across the front of the cab on the passenger seat, will only look straight out the window and will not turn and look us in the eye, respond to a question that we ask, or try to ask them a question directly, just get out the window, not responding to us. May even have to say to the driver, hey, quit answering, talking to her. Try to force that issue. That's a red flag. So it's just kind of concepts you have to think of. But yeah, I think where he's going with that is every person is different and they have a different attitude and perception and belief about things. And to go in where you've got thousands of parents, some may appreciate it, some may not. It's tough. It's a sensitive topic. So you try to appease the masses as best you can and try to kind of work that middle ground and keep everybody happy. I think that's kind of what you're saying is, and some schools will be like, no, we don't want that. You don't even want that brought up because then people are talking about it. I can tell you from being in the military for 33 years, it even goes on there because sometimes you're wondering, why are we having all this human trafficking type training? Military because of our rank structure and stuff like this, and then you hear these stories of stuff that's been going on and stories of, I'm sure it's going on in high schools, and you're like, what? But yeah, it's out there, and it just kind of happens. It starts small and develops, and next thing you know, you got soldiers in the military being prostituted. What? Where does that come from? I don't know. That's not my world. That's not how I grew up, but I'm different than other people. It's kind of, you're used to your normal and you don't think about everybody else's normal because you don't know that world. So.
No, Sheriff Kilberg, if everybody thought this was an issue, the church would be packed and we'd have waiting room out there, right? I know that it was advertised a bunch. So, and that's why we need your guys' help. Now if you guys can go out, educate your friends, hey, this is a big deal, this is what we're doing. I mean, that's probably what happened it's just realistically educating the people about it. Important. If that message, I mean, are there trucking companies out there that don't want this? Yep. Are there, other businesses out there that want this? Yep. But it's working to educate why it's important. It takes time. Have one off to you. Any other questions? Yep. So you hold that a lot different. You can talk a lot louder. So yeah, we actually work with majority of the truck stops out there. They have all allowed us in there to get those TAC cards. They all have those in there. We have a lot of window decals. If you go to the rest areas, as long as we've kept them and the officers have been watching them, they should be also the TAC cards in there also. But as far as the truck stop organizations out there, they've been wonderful. Carmen down there at Walcott, she welcomes us down there every single time. So, yeah, we're doing as much as we can, realistically. So it's keep working at it. Yes.
Hold the mic up to her, please.
Yeah.
What, if any, federal laws and if they apply regulations are in effect at this point that are used to this?
So are you talking about laws that are in place for human trafficking? Yeah, so realistically, I mean, there's a whole gamut of laws that could play into human trafficking ultimately at the end of the day. The things that you got to remember when somebody is breaking the law, can you go back to that one slide with the force, fraud, coercion? I think it's the definition of human trafficking should be slide 2 or 3 there of the presentation. So elements of the crime has to be met in order to be a charge, okay? So when we go back to this slide right here, that one right there. So in order for this to do it, it has to be fraud involved or force or coercion, and there has to be a third party making money in order to be human trafficking, okay? So one of those 3 have to be met. It just takes one of them, and it has to be a third party making money, okay? Now, are there other laws that potentially, if they're meeting one of those and a third party's not involved making money? Yes, and then you're gonna fall under potentially a prostitution charge, things like that. So Iowa human trafficking law resembles pretty much what the federal law, which is pretty much involved in that. It doesn't matter what the act is. Just those are the elements of the crime. You meet the elements of the crime. Trafficking. And so many times people want to think sex when it comes to human trafficking. Don't think labor too, okay? Because like that diplomat from India, that was a labor human trafficking charge there. You know, the one down in Atalissa, that was a labor trafficking charge there. So it doesn't always deal with sex act. Any other questions?
Is that what indentured slaves are then at the same?
To be real honest with you, I'd have to look at the true definition of indentured slave. I don't know if I'd want to speak of it without reading. I could speak of what I know, but I've not seen an official definition of indentured slave, so I think I'm going to hold off. I could Google it here at the end. Definition, then I could speak of it, but I don't know if I want to go quite there without being fully educated on it, because I just don't want to give wrong information. Does that make any sense? I know that probably sounds bad on my part, but
So Neil talked about the hotel situation earlier. probably everybody in the room has stayed at a hotel and will probably stay at a hotel somewhere in the future, right? So one of the things that we didn't recommend, or Neil didn't recommend, was to tell the hotel worker about it, right? Why would that be? Yeah, there's some, in our area, and I'll go down to kind of the Quad City area, there's some shady hotels where, when they don't have max capacity going on, they're not making money, so then they start thinking of other ways they can make money. And actually, the hotel is actually the medium that's being used to conduct that kind of illegal activity. So, better to call law enforcement, call 911. And everybody's probably staying at pretty decent hotels, but even if you call the front desk and maybe like, oh yeah, whatever, we'll get to that later, or whatever, or some guy named Brent, some ding dong is calling down here about it because he's concerned about, some gal went into a room. They may just blow it off. But if you call law enforcement, they'll respond. Hopefully you don't get the day one rookie cop that, will ask a few more questions and kind of sniff around a little bit and something doesn't seem right or doesn't feel right, and they'll dig in a little deeper. But yeah, that's why you wouldn't call the hotel because, and again, not every hotel is involved in it, but there definitely are some that are, actively participating in this stuff. So, yeah. Again, it's kind of the totality of the circumstances. Does it look wrong? Does it smell wrong? You kind of use all your senses. Come to the conclusion, yeah, something's not right here. Again, it goes back to that there's not probably one single thing, but if it doesn't look right and you start asking a few questions, it's like, all right, we got something going on here.
Perfect segue, Sheriff. So if you didn't know, under the Office to Combat Human Trafficking, if you go on their website, they have a list of all the hotels that have been certified, their personnel. So perfect segue, perfect. And there's rules that have been set in place that if you didn't know, if you work for the state, you have to stay in a hotel like that, otherwise the state won't reimburse you. They have to have the training for it. Again, that's the governor setting the standard and moving forward, and hopefully everybody starts to jump on board. And, nothing else, if we can get Iowa with a big old iron fence around Iowa, or even Jackson County, we'll start there. Then we'll get the entire state, and before long we'll get the nation, and hopefully maybe 50, 100 years down the road, but we can get it globally. Any other questions? I apologize, I probably took more of your Sunday afternoon than you might have wanted, but I really appreciate myself on behalf of the Motor Vehicle Enforcement. I appreciate each and every one of you willing to take the time to come in and listen. Spread your knowledge, spread your understanding of this topic, because that's the only.
Show the sergeant and the First Lutheran women our appreciation for today.
And give Kim a round of applause too. She had to deal with me to get this set up. So.
Thank you. I'm so happy so many came, and what a presentation. It was really wonderful. Thank you, Neil. We do have cookies and lemonade that they worked hard on, so don't leave without having some, and I'm sure he'll be here for a little bit for any questions. I do appreciate the ELWC that actually had this as one of its missions to have people within the Lutheran Church to promote education on trafficking. Kudos to them. So help your, Heidi? And I will, in the meantime, get some cards from you sometime with all the numbers on. Okay.
Yes, the human trafficking.
Have a great day.